For this Trans Awareness Week, we talk with a non-binary activist in the UK.
The rainbow wave continues to grow in numbers. Go us.
A new Whitney Houston biopic is finally going to tell more of Whitney's story.
And this Sunday is Trans Day of Remembrance, a reminder to us all that we still have a long way to go. Let's get there together as we carry their memories and say their names.
Welcome to Full Circle, the podcast.
Coming to you from the dining room table at East Barbary Lane, welcome to a special episode of Full Circle, the podcast. A weekly visit to our home where we squeeze a few headlines through our decidedly queer lens and see what happens. This episode is brought to you by Decanted Jug Wine and my gratitude for all of my trans family around the world this Trans Awareness Week.
I'm your host, Charles Tyson Jr.
And I'm your host, Martha Madrigal. Welcome to the Full Circle table. Hey.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm all kinds of things. How are you?
Okay. I think we've made that clear over time.
Right.
Is there a specific thing you'd like to talk about right now?
No, I was just saying how every time lately we go to record, it's like right before I hit record, I'm sniffly and I'm sneezy. It's like, and the weather's changing. I was like, what's going on with my face?
I don't know.
Other than that, I'm good. We've been busy. We've been podcasting like crazy people.
We have. You want to get that podcast business out of the way and then we'll talk about that? Let's
Sure.
Just knock it out.
Sure. So if for whatever reason at this point in life you still haven't done so, please rate, review, and subscribe to us wherever you go to listen to your podcasts. You know, give us 5 stars or more, a nice little review, tell us that you love us. If you want to hit us up directly, you can drop us a line at askfullcirclepod@gmail.com. Subscribe to us and follow us on our social. On Twitter at Full Circle Pod. On Instagram at Full Circle The Pod. On TikTok at Full Circle The Podcast. Or you could just visit our linktree/Full Circle The Pod. It's probably easier that way. Follow Martha everywhere at iMarthaMadrigal. Her writing is at IamMarthaMadrigal.wordpress.com. I'm Never Scared everywhere. If you really, really love us, and I know you do, hit us up on our Patreon and become a subscriber. Patreon.com/FullCircleThePod. For just $3 a month, you can be a subscriber and get all of our episodes ad-free and before everyone else. And then starting at the $6 tier, you can have access to all of our bonus material and behind-the-scenes stuff, and it only gets cooler from there. And then you can be a member of our Discord family. We have a Discord server at Full Circle, the podcast. We do all kinds of fun stuff, and you should be a part of it. And business is now over.
Okay. So we did 2 interviews we did Petals of Support, last week?
Right, and those episodes were out this week. We sat and talked with Mama D.
With Mama D at Petals of Support, and it's actually a 2-part episode. Both parts are now available.
Yes, because we talked a lot.
We did talk a lot. It was a good talk.
Yeah, it was a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, she was a lot of fun. And then we did Who They Want last night.
Yes, we did.
Which was our first live podcast.
Yes.
So that was interesting.
It was.
Yeah, that was interesting because folks could weigh in on real time, and there was a chat board and all of that.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, so we had a good time with them. We found out the Duchess, one of their hosts, lives about 5 minutes from here.
Yep. We're neighbors.
Small world.
Right.
Small world. And we're about to start live streaming on Bigo.
Yes,
So
we're going to be Bigo fam.
Yeah, so that should start. Bigo Live should start next week. So this was good practice for that.
Right.
We will be. You'll be able to find us. We're going to start with Martha Madrigal, and but I'm sure it'll be the both of us. And you can talk to us and weigh in and say hi and over on the Bigo app.
Yes, Lord knows we'll be keeping you abreast through our social media so you won't have to wonder when and where.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. So let's get right to it. It is Transgender Awareness Week, which does culminate on Sunday with our Transgender Day of Remembrance.
Yes.
The Day of Remembrance the word is not celebrated.
Right.
Acknowledged.
Commemorated.
I don't know. What's the word? The folks get together this weekend to honor those we've lost.
Right.
So, check out your locale to see what's happening. I think ours is actually happening tomorrow night, Friday night. So that's not a whole lot of notice for this podcast. But actual Transgender Day of Remembrance is Sunday, the 20th. And most places are doing something on Sunday. But I do believe in Philadelphia it is Friday night. So, yeah, we had the opportunity. I think it was at Shay's suggestion, wasn't it? So
yes.
Shay Coffee over at Midway Pride introduced us to Oscar Hoyle. Oscar is a young, non-binary LGBTQ plus advocate.
Yes.
Really focusing on working with trans kids. And we had a really lovely conversation.
We did.
Yeah, so I want to introduce y'all to Oscar, and we will be back. So, Oscar Hoyle, welcome to the Full Circle Table.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, we decided we would say good day to Shay Coffee with our favorite curse words. And this will probably never make the Midway Pride episode. What are yours? Top 3?
Oh, I'm really gonna drop it. My favorite, in fact, we'll go with the third favorite is fuck, then shit, and then my final one, which is probably the worst curse word, is cunt.
Right.
With a hard T, not like serving cunt, but like properly calling
cunt.
Someone cunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all can get away with that a lot easier than we can.
It's not. Yeah, I wish it were more popular here. It's not. It's a riddled word. And, I had a friend who said, listen, could you please stop using that word? It really bothers me. And I said, I can. Of course I can. And not just around her, but I've been more mindful of it, because in the American vernacular, but I love that, I want to go to the UK just so I can say cunt all day long because I feel like I save it up now. And, we were talking about a former mutual friend, this friend and I, the other day. And I said, you know what? She's just a cunt. And she looked at me and she said, she really is just a cunt.
Sometimes it's the only word that suffices.
Exactly. Yeah. My partner, when he if he stubs his toe or something like that, it's every curse word under the sun in like alphabetical order. So we use it all the time here. But I guess it also has quite a place in queer language as well. Mm-hmm. And I guess that doesn't always translate to sort of the cis-het people that we meet.
Well, that's true too. And, I've had that conversation. We actually had it here. We had a group of all trans friends here. Charles is cis. I am not. And we talked about the use of certain words. Because I said, my cousin and I growing up called each other faggots all the time.
Yeah.
But we never allowed that word. We owned a bar for 5 years, and that was one of the words that was not allowed in the bar. It's like, and I
one
got
of two. You can guess the other one.
Yeah, the other one was the N-word. Yeah. But I said the shorthand was faff. You're such a faff. So when we're in front of straight people, we call each other faffs, which is just faggoty ass faggot. And but we got into this conversation with the kids about how, sometimes we do claim words among ourselves, but we have to be really careful about how they're used
And where and when.
and where and when. You know, and I said, so we had that discussion. So it was interesting because I think younger generations just steer clear,
Right.
and which is smart.
Well, you
maybe
reclaiming because, you know, we want cishet people to feel comfortable with us, but we don't want them to get too comfortable with us.
Yeah.
You know?
There's an extent, right?
Right.
I'm noticing now that so many of the people I work with are reclaiming the word faggot, and they will use it to identify themselves at our sessions. And there's a part of me, I think, that hasn't got comfortable with it still. It still just makes me just cringe up a little bit, I guess. So for me,
Well,
that's
it does.
some unpacking.
Yeah, it does me too. Like, I have absolutely embraced reclaiming the word queer. You know, and I think that's probably common now for most of us, that it doesn't have the sting it once did. But it's just the generation before me that really does still bristle with that word.
I feel like it's a powerful word.
I do too, and I feel like, you know, I use it as our umbrella term often. You know,
The same.
Yeah.
so, but yeah, faggot is a very specific word. And, you know, I got into a conversation with one of our regulars, and he said, why? I've used the word all my life. You know, I don't mean it like that. And I said, why, friend? Because it's often the last word my people hear when your people put our teeth to a curb. That's why. Is that good enough for you?
And it was.
And it was.
Good.
He went, I really never thought of it that way. I can stop using that word. And I said, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, words matter.
Totally.
Words mean things.
Even as we're living in this dystopian time when it feels like they don't. When all the words are upside down. It's 1984. You weren't even born in 1984, were you?
No.
I know.
I can pretend.
Don't even try.
Okay, end call. No, I'm kidding.
Oscar, tell us a little bit about your personal story.
Yeah. So
Please.
I grew up in the middle of nowhere in rural England. And when I say middle of nowhere, it was like you would be able to get one bus a week and it wouldn't take you home. So it was really
wow.
nowhere. And I grew up relatively well, like my parents, in terms of lifestyle and providing things that we needed. Everything was there. I was really lucky. I came out as actually gay at the time, back when I was 14 years old. And that was when things started to get a bit more difficult. I probably say that my parents wanted to be supportive, but they didn't know the right way how. And when you're a 14-year-old who's been sort of building up that, oh my God, I'm different, everyone hates me for so long, and somebody not understanding how to react around you has the same effect on you at times, or mentally on you. It was quite difficult. I have vivid memories of being bought a book on how to like correct gay thoughts at the time, and
Of course.
advocated for things like pinging yourself with an elastic band when you had a gay thought, and that was from a parent, and they bought it off Amazon.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
Oh, yeah. No, that's real.
yeah. And I remember it wasn't an upset in who I was. It was an upset that they thought that the world was going to be out to get me. And because of that, I left home really young. I was about 17, and I moved to sort of sofa surfed for a very long time in friends' houses, down to Brighton, which is the gay capital of the UK, and spent a lot of time under the pier, doing naughty things. Before sort of actually, I really got myself into a place where I could still go to education, could still learn, which God knows how I did it, because I was not sober at all at that point.
I understand. Yeah.
Got myself a nice education, and then sort of decided after getting enough money to get comfortable that I didn't want to work in a corporate job. I mean, who does?
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah.
Right.
pursued activism quite hardly. And so I work for one of the UK's biggest civil rights charities now for LGBT inclusion, which I'm not allowed to name.
Okay.
Okay.
Also set up my own not-for-profit all around sort of getting LGBTQ plus younger adults who are sort of 18 to 25 into spaces where they could be safe. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that I know what it felt like to not feel safe despite everything around me being safe, if that makes
Right.
sense. And
Sure it does.
Yeah.
it kind of grew from there, I guess. The other noticeable thing, I guess, is I started attending trans rights protests aged like 14 as soon as I came out, because when things got tough, do you know who was there for me? It was, my trans mothers and trans brothers at the time who sort of, really guided me and made sure that I was going in the right direction. They knew that things weren't going to be easy if I didn't get my stuff together. So they really guided me in that sense. And I saw at the time, identifying as a cis gay man at that point, how crap things were for them and how things were seemingly moving forward so much quicker for us. And that was why I always took such a particular interest in sort of trans activism and, really dedicating as much time as I could to it. It wasn't necessarily until I was about 2020 that I realized that actually I was probably non-binary. And that came down to the fact that I didn't know it was a thing. There was no education on what non-binary was. I've always said, ever since I can remember, I don't really feel like a guy, but I know I'm not a girl, so I don't really know where I fit in. And then starting to meet all these new queer people was when I really learned who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I think that's especially true when you're there. I don't know if it's right to say on that spectrum, but that you understand your own gender in a way that, we haven't had the words for quite as long.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's important that we do, and obviously one of the things we all get so frustrated with is this idea of a trend, but
right. Yeah.
we just have better words. And when we have better words, we can use them to see one another better.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about the reclaiming of the word queer, and it just fits me to the way that makes me feel the most comfortable, because it's not putting a label. I'm just me. And that's the best. That's exactly how I've always felt, and why that word has such a special place in my heart, I think.
Right.
It's an important word, and we always kind of add it at the end. So we introduce ourselves a lot to a lot of people, and one of the reasons we do this podcast is because we live at that intersection, right, of gender and orientation and race all the time. It's a busy intersection. And so we talk about all those things. At our breakfast table, we talk about those things because that's our life. Our life together incorporates all of that. And, that one of my best friends who we lost in 2018, when you would ask her about herself, she was this very interesting, she was a piano player in a gay bar when I met her. And I said something about, are you a lesbian, or, something. And she said, honey, I'm everything. And she kind of meant that. She's like, there's been a couple of guys. Mostly it's women. I don't particularly feel feminine, but I don't particularly feel masculine. I'm everything. I'm a little of everything. And she was.
Yeah.
She was, she kind of was. Well, you didn't know how old she was. And most people did not know how old she was until she died. Because she was somewhere between 30 and eternity. And you had no idea. And, she had very long black hair. And she was just fabulous. She was just her. and she was one of the people that taught me it's okay. There's not one thing. There's not one thing to be, because I certainly struggled with my trans identity for a long time. And, when Charles and I got together as a queer couple, ostensibly a cis gay couple, I felt like that would be enough and I could be content, and I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't expressing me,
The fullness of you.
the fullness of me. And so, we just got to this place where I said, we're about to find out just how bisexual you are.
Still here.
Still here. Yeah, still here. We've been together for 10 years. But it's interesting as we explore identity. So your work, the nonprofits that you have either founded or continue to be a part of, tell me about that. Tell me what is, I want to get to what do you think the most important thing is we're doing right now? And, what are our biggest challenges? And, I want to get there.
Yeah.
But tell me where you have taken your journey in terms of priorities.
Yeah, so one of the first things that I started doing and voluntarily was queer youth working. So I would go into a building with about 30 hyped up sort of young people that ranged sort of from, I think the youngest I ever supported was 10 years old, all the way up to 18 years old. And it was mind-blowing to me that there were so many places that we had succeeded in, but there was still so much space. And I learned so much from these young people that I was working with around what their experiences are now. We all thought that appealing Section 28, which was a piece of legislation in the UK that banned the promotion of homosexuality, was a massive win. But
Sure.
I was finding out that kids still weren't learning about sex education that was LGBTQ plus inclusive, aspects like that. And I remember speaking to young people and not a single one of them having an idea what PrEP was, which was just shocking to me. So it lit a fire already, and I knew at the time something was bubbling up. And then we lost a trans young person. He was amazing. We're talking, he did so much in his 18 years. He got all of the local synagogues in our area to have gender inclusive toilets
Nice.
on his own, and just did amazing things. But we lost him, and I realized that part of it was that all of the support ended when you turn 18. In terms of, you have this fantastic service because you're a protected characteristic and vulnerable until you're 18. And then it's like, all right, well, look, there's this charity running a group for all LGBTQ plus people, and you're an 18-year-old and you can go and sit in a room with somebody who's maybe 40, 50 years older than you and listen to their problems as well as yours. And that wasn't right for the people that I support. There was nothing in between. So the initial goal was just to make a space where people that were 18 years old up until sort of 25-ish, we were quite lenient on that rule, to be honest with you, could come in and socialize, meet people that were from the community that knew actually you don't want to go to this service because they're a bit funny to trans people. You want to go here, or I know this person, I'll get you in for free. Those sort of things, and it really just naturally took off. I never paid for marketing for it once, and this group grew from the first session when me and my partner turned up and we're like, oh great, well it's just the two of us, I guess it's a romantic coffee date, to
Been
sort
there.
of,
Been
yeah
there. Yeah.
to sort of upwards of 20 people before lockdown. Then lockdown came and we lost that space, so we moved online. And what we were noticing was that it was great having the social aspect, but people need to learn. And the biggest issue that the members at the time were facing was that they dropped out of school or college because of bullying, harassment, not feeling welcome. Right. So we launched Blossom LGBT as a full wraparound service, which offered things like queer art workshops, queer performing art workshops. We've done comedy nights, taken over art galleries, even done things around. We had banks come in and talk about budgeting, writing CVs, because we
Wonderful.
really wanted to give the people the knowledge that they needed. Now, it was supposed to be just for LGBTQ plus people, but we found that really gay, particularly cis white gay men, and also generally, sorry, not cis white, yeah, gay men, and also cis white gay lesbians, didn't need our service very much. They came just to chat. It was the trans, the non-binary people, the gender non-conforming people that didn't really know what they were yet, who really needed us and needed that extra space, the additional support. Um, so it just naturally went in that direction that we became more trans focused. It was the right thing to do, and I stand by it. That not cutting out the LG, but focusing more on those who needed us most. So that's really where Blossom grew to, and now we have a team of about 25 volunteers. We run 4 weekly groups, including one for parents and carers of LGBTQ plus people. Too much. We do too much, basically.
Okay.
But
As if that's a thing.
Educate me. Is PFLAG a thing in the UK? Does PFLAG even exist over there?
We have very similar. We have F-Flag. Okay. So there are other bits and pieces in the area, but
What's
where
the
I,
F?
I'm not
What
sure.
is F-Flag?
But
Families and friends, maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Instead of just parents and friends?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that even was a thing, because, we do have that here to varying degrees. It all depends on locale.
Yeah.
But PFLAG, is always this umbrella, and, some are a lot more trans competent than others. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm going with that.
How far of a reach does Blossom LGBT have, like, in terms of region?
So our groups operate just in Surrey in person. But
in Surrey, okay.
Yeah, in Surrey. But we do online services too, virtual social spaces. We actually have a Discord server, things like that. So
great.
We have members from across the UK. We also have people that travel to our groups. People travel. Someone said they traveled 2 hours for an art workshop recently because they're just not there in the rural areas. And Surrey is quite not a rural area, but the surrounding counties can have quite rural locations, and they're just not targeted to the generation that we target our work to.
Okay.
What inspired you to incorporate the arts? I'm curious about that. I think it's so important. I think it's a natural fit. Where did that come from?
I was always passionate about exploring well-being. It was kind of the key thing that we wanted to do. And we thought long and hard about it. We did workshops around sort of meditation and yoga, but it was it just wasn't our pace, to be honest with you. It's important. It has its place. Mm-hmm. The reason why I went for art was twofold. The first one was queer culture and art have gone hand in hand for so long. You look at pride flags, that came from a collage of fabrics. And to know that, especially in the UK, funding to arts, access to art, especially for diverse people, was being cut as well. Yeah. I realized that there was such a gap. And actually, before we decided it, I didn't like art. I really didn't. And I met this amazing artist called Sophie Kathleen, who's non-binary queer artist, and Laura Hensfield, who helps out with our workshops. And they really inspired me just by sitting down and being having a chat with them and just painting something. It just blew my mind how I left feeling so rested, having spoken. And the second I did that, I was like, this is what we need, because you can express whatever you want through the art. If you are feeling a certain way about your identity, you can express that. But also, if you just had a rubbish day, you can do that. So that was what inspired me to do it.
Okay.
I think what I've taken actually more pleasure from than supposedly running the workshops is actually the fact that we got some funding from the lottery to run them and commission artists. So each month we get a queer artist from the local community, and we look for one that is struggling to access resources, maybe has doing some fantastic work but just isn't getting noticed, and we pay them roughly £200 to deliver a 2 hour long workshop with all of the resources provided as well. And I mean, in terms of sort of career launching, our artists after the workshops have gone on to feature in galleries. Sophie ran our first few workshops and is now had work featured in the Tate for a while. So we've really gone out there and promoted these artists, and I think honestly that's possibly what I'm more proud of from that workshop than the mindfulness aspect of it in itself.
Okay.
I love it. And I love how Blossom feels very similar to me as what we have here in Philadelphia, the Attic Youth Center, which is an LGBTQ youth advocacy group. And it's called the Attic because initially weekly meetings were held in the attic of this building, and it's very similar to what you do, where there's the social aspect, but there's also every week there was a guest speaker who would talk about the arts or life skills or things like that. And now they have their own building, which is amazing. So there's a kitchen. So for people who have food insecurity, they can depend on at least one meal a day, and different things like that. It's wonderful, and I'm so glad that you're doing that, because I am an alumni of the Attic, and it saved my life in a bunch of ways, probably ways that I'm not even aware of. So thank you so much for doing what you do, because I know that you're saving kids' lives as well.
A similar thing saved my life, so it just feels right.
That's so often how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. We start out as messy children.
Yes.
And never forget those who kind of help collect us a bit and keep us alive.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure that the messy aspect has gone just yet.
No comment.
I don't know that we ever lose that. We pick up better self-care along the way. How's that?
Ideally,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, 100%.
And I feel like a lot of what many of us do is reaching back to what was missing. Like everything is cool until we come out and then we have varying responses at home. I mean, I was a kid who was so bullied through school. And sometimes I could talk about it. Sometimes I could, but there just weren't a lot of options. We've worked with so many kids who, they didn't pick up the right reading skills. They can't fill out a job resume or, create a resume or fill out a job application on their own because that part was missing. Just trying to get through school, especially as trans, especially as, not passing as anything else, but, this person who makes others uncomfortable. And I was that person. I was that kid.
And it is just giving people that little leg up. That actually, in the moment, you think, oh, do you know what? All I've done is corrected a few spellings on this CV, or told them, no, don't say that you were selling burgers. Be like, you were upselling additional fries or something like that.
Right.
You don't think about it in the moment, but actually, what if that goes on to get them the job that means that they can leave an abusive household, which we see often?
Yes.
That's made the world of difference just from that small action. And it's a cliche, isn't it? Everyone talks about small drops in the ocean, but actually it does ripple out, and we so often don't think about the fact that just doing something like helping someone write a CV or producing a budget for someone who's just left home for the first time, you don't think about what huge impact that's going to have in the moment, because it just feels like the right thing to do because someone else did it for me once and it helped me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We spend too much of our time sort of collecting everyone.
Well,
Because we have to.
Well, yeah. Someone has
That's
to pick up
still a
the
thing.
pieces.
Yeah. Yeah.
you actually won an award for your work with Blossom, yes?
Yeah. We're also nominated for a few at the moment, but this was the Gadio Pride Award, which was basically for someone who contributed a significant amount to the LGBT community. And, I got a free ticket to Pride and a nice little tagline on my Twitter bio. The award was great, but I honestly don't really go for many of them because I find it. Oh, I don't know how. I don't want to be rude because I think awards and recognition are fantastic, but I'm not there for that, and I don't
of course,
really.
yeah.
Yeah, I like it's nice, but actually, I mean, I would rather get paid for what I'm doing, to be honest with you. But that's a whole other story.
Right. Fair.
A story that we are familiar with.
Yeah.
That's fair. Talk to me about the Sari Equity Project. Now, this is separate from Blossom, correct?
Yeah. So it's not as established as Blossom is. It's a project that's still in, I would say, it's launched, but it's got a long way to go. The idea of this is that people don't talk to each other in different communities. We look after our own, but throughout the work that I was doing at Blossom, I was like, oh God, like the demographic is so white, but I know that it's not a white location.
Right.
And there's certain demographics here, but a lot are missing. And that was the moment where I tried to connect with other organizations to find out, like what's going on. And there wasn't the support there in the sense that if somebody who was Asian and went to one of the services, they wouldn't speak to them about LGBTQ plus stuff. They would just focus on what support they need around their sort of ethnic origins. So I was like, well, no, like this doesn't help. We need to look at somebody and look at the whole person, really see them for who they are. So the point of the Equity Project, it was and is to connect professionals who are working on all different aspects of, I guess, diversity and inclusion, but also in community projects, and give them the contacts who have experience in different identities. And I mean, at the moment, it's at the point where it's still small. It's a chat that people just ping in and go, "Hey, this training on trans inclusion is happening and it's free." And then you get professionals who are maybe working in mental health or professionals who are working in a few of the local churches will come along to that because they've found the opportunity. So it's all about connecting professionals so that we actually look at people as a whole.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, that bringing together all the different components of the community is very important because a lot of times organizations will go for what is comfortable over what is helpful.
Well, yeah.
We don't do it for it to be easy. It's not supposed to be easy helping people. It'd be nice if it was, but it's not. And the people that need us most are the people that face multiple marginalizations. And if we can't reach them, or if we do finally reach them and then they have an awful experience because all we know is LGBT, well, then they're excluded completely. And we want to make sure that as a community, we are the fantastic, diverse community that we are.
Wonderful.
I think, yeah. I'm formulating a question because I have seen new groups start, and then new groups start, and then other new, And a lot of times it is the fracturing within our own community.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone has good intentions.
Right.
But sometimes the loudest folks who want the most credit are doing the least amount of work.
Like I like to say, you want to be seen doing the work as opposed to actually doing the work.
Yeah.
And then that fractures off into something else because we can't play together well here. Larry Kramer years ago coined the phrase, the queer population, because he said, we're not living up to the word community.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's all. It's often a struggle. It's often a struggle. We just went through it in Philadelphia where there was just this big fractured thing that happened. A lot of lies being told about people. The facts really didn't matter. And so, Philadelphia Pride is not what it used to be. It used to be this huge celebration, and now it's not that. It was kind of taken away. We'll see how it rebuilds. But a lot of it didn't happen truthfully. Do you know what I mean? Have you encountered that? Have you, and what do you do? How do you keep yourself going? If you have, we have, I could talk to you about it all day. It happens. And I think you have to just kind of stay up here,
Mm-hmm.
When they go low, we go high, whatever. The work needs to matter more, but.
Yeah. So, one of the first organization that I volunteered with for a very long time, when I first came out as non-binary and not wanting to be identified as male, it was very clear that they preach inclusivity, but they didn't necessarily actually act inclusiveness.
That's common.
And yeah, really, really common. Everyone's welcome until you don't fit our cookie cutter. And things got incredibly, incredibly nasty. There was rumors being spread. I remember getting to the point where I was like, do you know what? If I have to go away, and I literally packed up my stuff and went to the other side of the country for a week, just because I was like, I can't cope with this negativity and nastiness. All I want to do is support people. And it was really difficult to navigate. And I definitely can't turn around and say I dealt with that in the best way I possibly could, because I definitely didn't. And when you're in the moment, sometimes things are said, I regret that.
Right.
I definitely regret that. But, in the same breath, if I wasn't so fiery, I wouldn't be where I am now. So
Exactly.
I navigated it pretty much by realizing, do you know what? It doesn't matter what other people say about me, think about me. I am doing something with a good social purpose that's gonna help people. It's gonna make a change, and I'm not gonna let drama from individuals who would prioritize looks and appearances than over how the actual work. So I decided to basically carry on, just go forwards. And it was difficult. It was really tough. For a long time, I would do something with Blossom, and that organization would be like, oh, well, we're going to do it 2 times better. But I thought, I don't care. Do you? Because I'm coming at this from a place of true authenticity. I'm doing this because I want to do it, because I care about it. And if you're doing it out of spite, well, it's going to show. And it did.
Yep.
It did show. And I totally wish I could go back and change the way I acted. It's never nice to fall out with people, but sometimes getting people out of your life is the right thing to do as well.
Well,
that's true.
And
that's
just letting that growth inform your work today, because we can't go back. You know what I mean? Nobody can. And you're not going to accomplish anything if there aren't mistakes.
Exactly. It's an opportunity, isn't it?
And there are going to be clashes, and there are going to be, times when we all have to sit and weigh our ego against what really matters. That's part of the growth process for everyone. it really makes me sad when people just throw their hands up in the air and say, I can't be involved anymore, because there was conflict or, because it got hard.
I've seen it so often.
Yeah.
But you look at these amazing people who want to do so much for the community, and they're met with negativity in some aspect, and they just sort of think, you know what, I'm not going to deal with this. And then we have lost someone who could have done amazing work.
Right.
And it's important that even if we disagree with what someone's doing, even if we don't like the way that they're acting or we don't understand their identity, that we take them for who they are and ensure that we're uplifting everyone, not just those who are palatable.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we hope that's the work.
Right, because there's unfortunately too many people out there whose mindset is, we want change, we want justice, we don't want to be inconvenienced in any way.
Well, there's that.
And you can't. And also, one could argue, if you don't have those mistakes and clashes along the way, are you even doing it right? You know what I mean?
Definitely. There's always a place for discomfort. And I think if we, as people who are looking to create change, don't create discomfort at some point to someone, then we're not creating change, because you're not questioning fundamental things that people assume or think that aren't correct. Although there is time and a place for it. I always like to think, it's okay to lose a battle if you win the war. It's a motto that I've lived by for quite a long time. But it's funny because I was talking about this with someone recently, and not this exact thing, but in terms of causing people discomfort or putting them in an awkward position. And we were talking about activism. So at the moment in the UK, and I don't know if you have something similar, we have lots of climate protests, and they are sort of shutting down the UK's biggest motorways. Not destroying, but throwing paint over pieces of art, aspects like that.
Oh yeah, we've talked about them on our podcast.
And soup.
yeah.
Soup.
And to an extent, I think, wow, that's brave, and that's really getting momentum and vision on these people and what they believe in. But I also think that when it comes to something as fundamental as who you are, so your trans identity, that sometimes causing someone discomfort isn't the right way to win empathy. And I think that especially at the moment, what we need is empathy and compassion from individuals. So I look at activism and I think to myself, years ago, there was a magician who lived in a glass box in London for quite a long time. I can't remember how long it was. And it was like this amazing PR stunt. And he was in the news every day because of how he was surviving in this glass box. And I think to myself, I didn't cause any discomfort to anybody. I didn't upset anybody. Right. But what it did is it got him incredible attention, and it got people talking about him, what he's up to. And that, I'm not saying let's go and put trans people in glass boxes, because I think that's maybe what gender criticals want. But I'm saying we should be
metal boxes.
We should be focusing on looking into ways of creating change that don't always cause that sort of discomfort or dispositioning of people who want to go about their everyday life.
Right. Well, and there's definitely a way to do that. And, going back to talking about, the climate activists and, going into the museums and throwing soup on the paintings. When we were talking about, they were talking about like when you are staging these, activism stunts, for lack of a better word, is it effective if what we're talking about after the fact is what you did as opposed to why you're doing it?
Mm-hmm. What they were wearing was so common.
Right. You got all this attention for the thing that you did, but your cause didn't get any more attention.
We were talking about someone who glued their hands to a wall and then, was kind of upset that they didn't get help in that from the people whose wall they glued themselves to. And it's like, oh, honey, you didn't think this through.
Right. You didn't even bring a bucket.
I offer 3 words honestly, to every advocate and activist I've ever spoken with, and I've talked to a lot of them. And then what?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to, I think, to be effective, you've got to answer that question first. Before you take an action, before you decide, what you're going to do, and certainly before it happens, say, and then what? Are they going to be left talking about why we did it, or are they going to be talking about what we did?
Yeah.
Right. Because let's say that the head of whatever company you're protesting sees your stunt and then goes, you know what? You're right. Come into my office and let's have a conversation. Now what?
Yeah.
Do you have a plan beyond that act?
Well, right. And what are you trying to do? Because it's important to know, everyone's not. We watched the documentary not that long ago about Nan Golden.
All the Beauty and the Bloodshed.
I think it's called All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, and it was part of the Philadelphia Film Festival. And Nan Golden is a very famous photographer, and she was protesting the family that
Sackler,
the Sackler family that is behind OxyContin, and before that Valium. So really, one could argue very responsible for the opioid crisis. And, their names were on all these art galleries and museums around the world. And so, she did this very targeted action, or several of them, that got that name removed, got museums to stop taking their money, and ultimately was very successful. And we contrasted that with some of, what's been happening more recently. And it was like, okay, there's an artist using her platform, using her position, that they did a prescription drop, right? So they had copies of a prescription with information about the, Sackler family. It was a blurb. It was important information. And, they went up to whatever, the 5th floor of this atrium and dropped them all down. And then they usually wind up with like a die-in. First of all, they didn't destroy any art. They didn't make anyone have to clean up any art. But they were quite effective. Mm-hmm. So I just always think it's important. I know I sound old sometimes, but I love the creativity that I see coming out of young people. I love a lot of, I love it when a corporation takes money. So we just told the story of, there were Proud Boys here in America wearing Pit Viper sunglasses,
yes,
in a photograph, and Pit Viper made a donation to the Southern Poverty Law Center, which battles white supremacy. I like those creative responses. I love to see them, and the words I offer are just, and then what?
Yeah.
Where are we trying to go here?
Yeah.
Because it helps to sort out a lot of what you're doing, I think.
Oh, I totally agree. I think that you look at any successful campaigning, I'm always astonished. And one of my favorite sort of groups is ACT UP. And
same.
There's Larry Kramer.
There was so much affirmative action in what they were doing, but there was always a point to it, and sometimes that point gets lost. Sometimes it's like, oh, this person was transphobic, so I'm going to go and leave a bottle of piss on their doorstep. And I think to myself, all that achieves is creating even less of an advocate than they already were. And I guess that's
right.
That's what you're getting to as well, is that we need to really be more tactical in how we target our energy as a community and as people wanting a better world.
Right, because if you're going to be that pointed and, for lack of a better word, heavy-handed with your activism, you can't also then be vague with your message.
Yeah.
Right. It was probably one of your tweets that I read, and you said something I say often is, how vital allies are. Now, you don't get to raise your hand and call yourself an ally. I'll let you know, but it's the absolute truth. So, there is this conversation always between sort of respectability politics, which is not what I'm suggesting at all, and the actual fact that we do need allies.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think the tweet you're getting at was to do with the fact that we're entering a political and financial environment that's going to be difficult. And we've seen it before when we've gone into recessions. There is a rise in far right and fascist opinions, and that's because people need someone to blame. They're angry, they don't know where to channel the anger to, and often the political parties give them that scapegoat. And it's why allies now, and why we should be focusing on building allies now, is so important, because if things are bad now, I have a suspicion that when the recessions hit, when people are looking for someone to blame, the people in power are going to be looking for those parties to push. And I'm not saying it's going to be trans people. I mean, in the UK,
it already
exactly
is. Exactly.
In the UK,
it already is.
It was trans people. It's trans people now, but before that, it was people on disability benefits. And this is why we need allies, because we need people that actually know who we are, know what we do, why we do it. Because they're going to be the ones at the end of the day where someone's going to feel comfortable enough to say to them, oh, I really don't like these so-and-sos because they're coming and taking the money. They're the people that have the power to say, actually, no, have you heard this or this? Because people aren't going to say that to us. I mean, some will, but the majority of people aren't brave enough to say something like that.
Right.
Until the resentment has got to such a point where they can't really control their hatred and they don't have a rational reason why. And I think that's why allies have such an important part, why we need to be mindful of that.
Absolutely. We accomplish much of what we accomplish. So I view the work as twofold, and I'm interested in your take on this, but it is that internal work. It is that looking around and saying, if our kids aren't sheltered and don't have food, we have nothing. Like, there's absolutely that aspect of the work. And then if we ever want to get them beyond sex work, if we ever want to get them beyond, to get them toward art, to get them toward education, we've got to kind of go back and fill in those gaps. And then we also want to do the work to make sure that doesn't happen, or that happens less. That's one aspect of it. We've got to do that work. But then there's the whole other side that, we can prepare our folks for jobs. The jobs need to be out there. So there's a whole lot of education. And then that means, you got to talk to cishet people. You've got to... Yeah, right?
Right.
Somebody has to get in there and have that conversation. It is enormously taxing. It's emotional labor that everyone doesn't want to do, and I don't blame them. Google should be everyone's friend.
Right. It's free.
But, there's always that other side, like, and I say all the time, we need all forms of activism and advocacy. We need folks who get out there with a bullhorn. That's never me. Like, I'm not. I'm not. I'm the one over there in the leopard coat going, yeah, thumbs up. But I will walk into the room. Now that we've embarrassed you into talking with us, I'll talk to you. I believe very much in human dignity. And preserving that as much as is possible. But, the one argument I'm never going to get into is whether I'm real.
Oh, totally. I always say I'm coming to discuss identities, but I'm not coming to discuss the validity of those identities.
Thank you.
That part. Yeah.
That's so important. And I do agree with you. We definitely need, allies in particularly corporate places, but political places too. The issue I take with it is that there isn't enough work to engage corporate allies, in the sense that I see it so often that somebody is considered an ally in their workplace, and what that means is they've signed up to get a free lanyard and pop something on their internet signature, and they don't have the foggiest how to be an ally. And you know, I think awareness raising is really important, but actually, I think what I would encourage allies to do is actually learn how to challenge and how to have difficult conversations, because that's what's really going to make the change. Once you're in a place because you have the privilege to be cishet and you've got into the space, you need to be able to challenge when you see things, and that I think is what is so missing in allyship in certain areas. And I know a lot of people that role model it amazingly well, and I have so many connections, friends, relatives who are fantastic allies because they know how to question things and they don't feel ashamed, because it's not a difficult conversation to have. Sometimes it might feel it, but I would say 99 point not well, maybe 80% of the negativity or the nasty opinions, they come from ignorance. And
Right.
if no one is equipped to call that out other than queer people, then there's not going to be as much change as we need. And I think that's what we really need to focus on with allies more so, is actually taking them from, okay, so you have an understanding of what queer people are, you have a lanyard, nice, but now how do you use that? And I don't mean like physically choking someone out with the lanyard, but how do you use that lanyard?
But I don't not mean it. No,
yeah. But how do you use that knowledge that you now have to take it to the next step, to really challenge and communicate on our behalf? And that's what true allyship is. And I think sometimes that's lost in certain areas.
Yeah.
I think that is true allyship. I also think, one of my frustrations with media is you don't hear our voices.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's talking about us. Very few people are talking to us.
Or with us, yeah.
Or with us. And sometimes I feel like our allies are trying to protect us from ourselves or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying we don't have a world of broken toys and folks who should not have a microphone. We have those.
Right.
Everyone does, though. That's just part of humanity. But, we've had a couple interesting programs here in the States that were pretty well done. But the actual trans representation in both of the programs was minimal. Minimal. So I appreciate them doing it. I appreciate them doing good work. It's better than a lot of what we've seen. John Oliver just did a special, and so did
Jon Stewart.
And I think that they did well. But, when I broke it down, I said, okay, Jon Stewart had trans people giving little sound bites. And then the one trans person on the panel was from the ACLU, which good, fine. And I don't know, maybe psychologically this is what cishet people need to hear, is folks talking about us and saying the right things. Because it wasn't that they got anything wrong. It's just, I feel like, we kind of get frozen out.
At the end of the day, it required a cishet white man to tell the story, to tell
our stories, because they don't want to hear it from us.
I think there are very few things that people can feel compassionate and empathize with that I've not seen, and I think that's God and some planets, to be honest with you. And I think that for people to truly empathize and feel compassion to a trans experience, they have to hear us and see us.
I think so.
And not through someone else's lens, which is the most vital thing. I have had to pull teeth to get anywhere in terms of media. I have tried a lot. I have had documents that I've wanted to share with the media, and they don't care because it's coming from me. And I guarantee you, if I passed that on to someone that didn't sign their emails off with they, them, it would have been taken so much more seriously. And I finally, last year, got to do my media engagement with The Guardian UK. And it was about how trans people's mental health is close to breaking point because of the current government's price. It's actually not got there yet. Yeah, it's got worse by the government. But anyway. But I did that. And before I knew it, there were trans people in my circles that were angry at me for engaging with the media because they have had historic or previous transphobic narratives within their paper. And I just think that
Right.
we need to engage. And it might suck. It might be horrible to talk with these newspapers knowing the negativity that they've spread. But they're the ones that are reaching people. And if some of us
Right.
don't take that step and talk to them, then people will continue to be overlooked. And that's why I did it. It definitely got met with mixed opinions, but it had to be.
Okay.
I think it was important at the time, and you may well disagree, but
I haven't read the piece.
the piece was trans positive. It was very much in our favor.
Okay, and I promise you I will go do that. You know, it's true in America. It's true of human beings, so it's got to be true there as well. We have folks who don't want to give Joe Biden credit. Well, and not even him as much as, like, you know, they often hold up Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And, well, there was a time when they said marriage was between a man and a woman. Yes, there was. Yes, there was. And we can lick that wound forever.
Right.
Or we can celebrate the fact that our advocacy continued and the world changed enough that now Joe Biden is saying things as the president of the United States that are clear and completely affirming of the trans community, of the queer community. Absolutely speaking, you know, without malice, to say these things matter. And these people are human beings who need to be treated like human beings. And that's happened all within our generation. So I was a baby for Stonewall in 1969, but I was here on the planet. But I recognize how much has happened in my lifetime in terms of queer rights, in terms of representation, in terms of visibility. And it's staggering how quickly we went from 2004, gay marriage was used as a boogeyman to help Republicans win an election. And then in 2015, we had national marriage equality. So that was 11 years of a lot of hard work and a lot of advocacy and a lot of people figuring out how to work together. So it's easy to sit and to say, all right, the Guardian is a rag and they were shit to us, and so we will never again talk to them. And that may be true, but, you know, there's so much more nuance to that. There's so much more who's writing for them now, you know, because they're all a bellwether, right? They're all, you know, does the media create the news sometimes? But a lot of times they're trying to reflect it. They're trying to do a good job. They don't know how. But when we write off politicians, when we write off potential allies because of mistakes they've made in the past, well, what about it? We make mistakes all the time. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
Humans make mistakes all the time. And I think we have to, you know, we've got to kind of have an open, if we don't have an open heart, who will?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And if we close ourselves off to these people, then we're never going to get where we need to be. You know, unfortunately, Guardian, as an example, and most newspapers, except for maybe News of the World, aren't going away.
Right.
So,
right.
Well, they're not.
We need to be there. If we're not standing up, we can't be counted. And
it wasn't the Daily Mirror, right? Yeah. You didn't talk to them.
Oh God, no.
See,
or the Sun, or
right.
Daily Mail.
Right.
You know, I chose it carefully because they often have both sides. You know, and I was careful with that. I wouldn't do one that I knew was promoting false propaganda constantly.
Right.
Still, but I chose one that does a bit of both.
Right. Well, you know,
of two evils.
You just struck on something. There aren't both sides to this. There aren't two sides to my humanity.
No, very fair. Yeah,
right.
That was a bad choice of words.
Or any of our humanity. We do exist. We have existed throughout time. We've existed as a community in various forms for as long as you have. We are an aspect of humanity. We are a naturally occurring aspect of humanity. And that is a beautiful thing. And throughout history, sometimes we've been celebrated and sometimes we've been crucified. But we've been here too. So that's why I say, well, that's not up for debate, because the thing I am is rare.
Yeah. And special.
Just rare. Right. I said, I love often to throw out the numbers of, I was born with blue eyes, I was born with red hair, and I was born left-handed and trans. I'm a unicorn.
Yeah.
That all those things came together in one. Yeah, that's a lot of rarity. So I can understand why I may make you uncomfortable, but it's not because I mean to. It's just because I don't occur that often. And that is true of the queer community. We're just rare. And we're also, I think, we are a reflection, back at people. The madder they get and the more they intentionally don't understand us. Right? It's my hope that we survive it.
Right.
But it's tough.
Yeah, it's something that we're speaking about a lot at the moment, is how do we make sure that we keep on fighting, I guess, but still steering a narrative into a direction that works right for our community, because we can be reactive consistently, but actually we need to stop being as reactive and start being more proactive and getting the narratives out there that we need. And it's something that I'm hoping to work on in the future, is a program to sort of launch future activists to give them what they need, because we really need to make sure that we continue on and on and on. And I don't think that there's a time in the super near future that we won't need people to be advocating for us. So it's a key thing that I'm really thinking about at the moment. Definitely don't have an answer, but
okay. We're seeing more and more of that, right? So we're seeing more and more of political organizing around encouraging LGBTQ people to run for office, encouraging women and people of color to run for office. In Philadelphia, very briefly, we had what I thought was a wonderful program, which was, so the argument was being made that the boards of most of the queer organizations in the city were cis white people.
mm-hmm.
Even in places where the community served was majority people of color, and queer people of color at that. So the people making the decisions were all cis and white, but the people, they were making decisions for were not that. And what they did, and I think there was only one cohort that happened, was a pipeline, right, through the city. It was like a pipeline program to teach folks how to be on a board. What is a board? How does it work? What is the structure? How much input do you have, should you have? What should you know to bring to the... So it really was creating leaders. It was saying, okay, we do have a gap in qualified folks. And what I mean by qualified is just knowledgeable, just understanding board structure and nonprofit structure, how all of this functions. It's not whether it's right or wrong, but the point was it needed to be changed. But we also, the argument that was coming from the boards was, well, who?
Right.
Well, okay. So let's first of all, let's ask the community to raise their hands. Who wants to know more? Who wants to better understand how all this functions? Who wants to feel better prepared to then go look for these roles? And now we've provided you folks who are in a much better place to do these things with you. Now what? So I think it's great. I think whether it's activism, whether it is board structure, whether it is political office, we saw a lot more queer people running for school boards in the United States this year, thank God, because we have a really far right-wing religious aspect trying to take over our school boards and then ban books and pretend we don't exist. and it's chilling, absolutely chilling. So another good direction. Hey.
We'll get there. Well, eventually. But something that I'm always told is I flutter a lot. I do a lot of different ideas. It's
Okay.
really interesting. Queer neurodiverse, so trying to tie me down is just impossible.
I
And
don't know
I think
anything
about
about
things a lot.
that.
Well, right. And, you know, and we have a beautifully large portion of our community that is neurodiverse.
Yeah, yeah, and but part of that is doing a lot, and um,
Yeah.
it's something that I'm very mindful of, but I'm very excited because I can see real potential in finding ways to build in activists and build people that are going to advocate for the community in the future. Because it's tough. I'm not considered like a big time activist, but I do more hours on the not for profit stuff and activism stuff than I do in my full time job.
Right.
So it's we need to find ways to make activism sustainable, and I think part of that is giving people the skills that they need, but also giving people the opportunity just to do smaller bits. We don't need activists. Well, we need them, but we should have activists that I think can be masters in one area, not having to do everything.
Right.
Well, and that's sustainability is such a big factor, and a lot of the time it really is the structure, right, of an organization where people will raise their hand, but then there's no one on the receiving end to say, come over here and stuff these envelopes, or come over here and, get these social media posts done. Breaking it down into chunks and keeping folks engaged is the hobgoblin of whatever your nonprofit is, right? That making that connection. Because I think people do want to be involved, but they may only have a couple hours a week or a month to do something. So yeah, it has always been thus, and it will continue to be. But you have amazing energy. I love the direction that your work is taking.
Oh yes.
And I will offer you this. Leaders lead. It is part of a person. Some folks, we use that term born leaders, but some folks are. And you'll find out. But if you are, then you are. And leaders lead. That's what they do. They don't cry about it. They don't lick their wounds for too long. And but they also figure out how to take care of themselves for the long haul, because the stuff will always be there in one form or another. But you're doing amazing things.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure today, and I'm so inspired by the conversations that we've had as well. I completely agree. Mental health is so important, and especially in what we do and what you do as well. These conversations aren't always happy. It's so important that we're taking care of ourselves in these spaces.
Yeah, and it I keep saying straight people drive us crazy, and then they want to call us crazy, and it's like, yeah, well, okay. But we need to remove that stigma of not just talking about mental health, but really actively taking care of it in all the ways that we can, and creating more and more access to it, because it is so fundamental to the health of our community. I really appreciate you. It is. I feel like we have a new friend, and we are always here.
Yes.
I think I gave you my best advice, and you've certainly given me some great hope. And that last bit that I try to offer everyone, that is, keep going.
Please keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that the future is bright. Every time we talk to young folks who are really doing the work and figuring it out, and you pick yourself up and you keep going. I love it.
So No doubt we'll talk from a prison cell.
Right?
For my behalf, not yours. But yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. What's the most important thing we should be looking at right now or thinking about?
For me, it's trans young
Yeah.
people. That's the most important thing. And that's such a general thing, but they are the future of our community, and things are looking incredibly
And
bleak for them, more so than
yeah,
us.
most under siege. I agree with you. I agree with you. And I thank you for all the work you're doing with our young people.
Thank you.
On Thursday the 1st of December, it's the Red Ribbon Cabaret. Wandsworth Oasis will be hosting an evening full of singing, comedy, and of course, drag. Starring West Enders, Barbara Fellas, Denise and Barry Poppins, Martin Joseph, and of course, the diva extraordinaire. It's me, Lyra Bell.
On the night, we'll also have our live auction full of fabulous goodies to get your hands on.
That's right. Head on over to wandsworthoasis.org.uk to grab your tickets, which only start from £25.
Wandsworth Oasis is a local charity that raises awareness of HIV and helps fight the stigma, ultimately supporting people living with HIV.
I really enjoyed talking to them.
Yeah, I really did. Young people give me hope.
Yes. And they're adorable.
Like most politicians never will.
Right.
Yeah, they are adorable. That is Oscar Hoyle, and we will put information about Oscar's work in the podcast notes for this episode.
Yes, we will.
So let's talk about some good news, right? I already mentioned it is Trans Awareness Week. Each year, November 13th to 19th, people and organizations around the country participate in Transgender Awareness Week to help raise the visibility about transgender people and address issues members of the community face. So, looking at the U.S. elections, first of all, you know, we talked last week that there were about 340 known winners, LGBTQ candidates who won in the 2022 election. We're up to 436.
Wow.
That is 100 more than in 2020, with a 60% win rate. So more than half of the time when we run, we win. There are 54 more races that have not yet been called, including Will Rollins in California, Chris Mays in Arizona. So how cool is that?
That's very cool.
Yeah, makes me happy. Makes me happy.
We're everywhere, and we got some power.
Yeah, it is increasing. Representation matters. We talked about some key wins. I wanted to mention Lee Fink, who is the first trans person ever elected in the Minnesota State Legislature.
That's cool.
Yeah, first in the Minnesota House, first ever trans person joining a rainbow wave of nuclear lawmakers in the state.
Work.
The U.S. midterm elections saw Fink of the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party, DFL, win 81% of the vote to the Republican Trace Johnson's 18% for the district's 66A seat. She ran on a strong platform of racial justice, reproductive rights, preventing gun violence, supporting a statewide equal rights amendment, and explicit protections for trans and gender nonconforming young people, as well as improving mental health support in schools. The parent of two also runs her own film production business, having produced documentaries like White Savior, Racism in the American Church, and attended the ultra-conservative Christian Bethel University.
I saw that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Fink is among 11 open LGBTQ plus legislators now elected in Minnesota during the midterms, during the Rainbow Wave.
Nice.
Yeah, I love it. There was one quote from Mayor Anise Parker, president and CEO of LGBTQ Victory Fund, which did endorse Fink. Leah made history tonight because she is ready to disrupt the status quo and fight for real change on behalf of her community. From safeguarding abortion rights to addressing societal inequities, she has a vision for the future that voters are clearly enthusiastic about. Her win is a clear and deafening rebuke to the transphobia currently sweeping our communities, and her success will inspire other trans people to step up and run. When our rights are on the ballot, we cannot stay silent. Leah proves we must continue running for office in record numbers because when we run, we win. Huge congratulations to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, as the information unfolds, I'm gonna pay attention to it and maybe bring stories of more of the candidates
Okay.
to the fore. So what else we
For
got?
me.
What else we got? Trans in the City. I was reading about this in Pink News. There was an article about Bobby Picard. She talked about surviving against the odds. She is a trans woman who runs an organization called Trans in the City. And I thought, this article was uplifting and a great thing to share for this week. The first time Bobby tried to transition, she lost her career overnight. What followed was a turbulent few years. In her darkest hour, she attempted suicide, believing she no longer had a future. When I first tried to medically transition in the early 2000s, it cost me my career. It was professional suicide. Picard ultimately became self-employed, a move which pushed her medical transition back by a decade. During this period, this suicide attempt was during this period of her life. Thankfully, she survived, and today she's the proud CEO of Trans in the City, a collaborative project that works to raise awareness for trans and non-binary people in business globally. Trans in the City has recently partnered with Pink News to bring the truth of what it means to be trans and non-binary to businesses and to society. She said, what we're here for is to promote those trans and non-binary people that are doing such amazing things in our society. We've got helicopter rescue pilots. We've got rocket scientists working at NASA. We've got paramedics and nurses and members of the armed forces. None of their stories are getting out there, and they're doing such amazing things for society day in and day out. That's why Trans in the City is here, to try and promote the positive things that trans and non-binary people are doing for our society. Came about after she came out in the business world and medically transitioned in 2016. She quickly started to see the gap that was opening up in workplaces. Organizations that had trans role models or a budget for diversity training were creating safe spaces for trans employees, but those with less money and fewer trans people weren't. In 2017, she got a few organizations together and ran a really quiet event during Trans Awareness Week. It was a raging success, so I ran a slightly bigger one the year after. The first proper year of Trans in the City, we had 5 organizations join us. The year after, we had 64. Then we had 250. This year, we've got the largest venue in Canary Wharf that we're renting out for the whole day. It's going to be 600 people attending. We've got over 360 organizations from all around the world signed up.
Nice.
Yeah. Today they've run awareness courses through Trans in the City in every country and definitely every continent apart from Antarctica. Over time, Trans in the City has turned into a movement. It's all about collaboration. It now has a board of directors that bring a wealth of talent and expertise. The success shows that things are changing, but there's still a lot more work to be done to make workplaces truly inclusive. They're certainly better in bigger global corporations, depending on the country you're in, obviously. I think for the small and medium enterprises, I don't think things are that much better. Certainly for trans and non-binary people looking for new roles, we still have those challenges. We still see that trans and non-binary people are 4 times more likely to be unemployed than any other diversity, and we still see microaggressions. Sometimes we just see straightforward aggression and abuse in the workplace, and that all stems from a lack of awareness. Really terrific article. Talking about how trans and non-binary people are doing vital work in our society while businesses become more and more inclusive, it seems as though the government wants to go on a different track. No kidding. And I guess that's one of the things that really needs to be resolved. Business owners are now streaking years ahead of the government's position. It'd be nice to see the government taking a more open and actually a more up-to-date view of inclusion and bringing itself more in line with the business community. Really terrific, really uplifting. I love the work that they're doing. Bobby Picard.
And every time I see trans in the city, I can't help but like hear theme music and picture like Laverne Cox walking through the streets of New York looking all fierce and seeing a picture on a bus.
Right. That works. That works.
Did I just pitch a show?
I know, right? One more item. Kai Shevers. We talked about her, before. And Pink News did, another update, a little bit more in-depth story, in her own words. And I think it's really worth the read. This is a person who had come out as a trans man and then detransitioned at least a bit and has come to see that, to change that identity a little bit. But what they went through, it's a story we've heard with conversion therapy. Let me just read some of this. Kai was confused about her gender, detransitioned after being sucked in by gender critical feminism. Now she's rebuilding her life. She is transmasculine, genderqueer, and uses she/her pronouns. She began medical transition by taking testosterone when she was 20 after coming out as a trans man, but she soon realized that her gender wasn't binary. I had tried living as a more binary trans guy, but that didn't really work out, and I felt more genderqueer, she told Pink News. Then I thought I felt more like a butch dyke, and I kind of wanted to explore that part of myself. Looking for support, she turned to online forums. I was expressing these doubts and in a psychologically vulnerable place. She was approached by a woman who she describes as fairly turfy, and had, like her, been reading some content online about detransition. I feel like we both got sucked in towards transphobic or gender critical feminism because, firstly, those are the people who were trying to latch on to our stories. It kind of made sense to me, like I wasn't sure how to reclaim the female or butch parts of myself without drawing on some of the stories I'd already heard, that there's pressure on butch lesbians to transition, or they're transitioning because of internalized misogyny. But over the next 3 years, Shevers descended down, and it could be Skeevers, I could be saying it wrong, so I do apologize, descended down an anti-trans rabbit hole. She found a community in circles of detransitioned radical feminists and was held up as an example of transness being a result of internalized misogyny, homophobia, and trauma. She recalls even holding a workshop at the Trans Exclusionary Michigan Women's Music Festival known as Mitchfest. It was very well attended. A whole lot of turfy lesbians who showed up to hear about the poor lesbians who got sucked in. They ate it up. Now looking back, I can see I got love bombed. There was just lots of positive attention. She describes this sense of community and support as intoxicating and adds, it felt like we were doing this important work and helping people. A lot of us had gone through this sort of intense conversion experience, converting to this particular interpretation of radical feminism, lesbian feminism. But I feel like most of us were in some kind of real distress, and believing in this stuff felt good. We did find connection with each other. We were just connecting over transphobic beliefs and also, I would say, self-harm. She's clear that there is nothing wrong with detransition and that everyone's journey of gender discovery is different. The problem is that when those people search for support, they are more often than not finding radicalized anti-trans communities to lean on. This is one of the reasons I feel like there needs to be more talk about these issues outside of transphobic groups. If they're the only people talking about it, it's easier for people to get sucked in and radicalized and end up believing a bunch of transphobic crap. The process of extricating herself from the group she found herself embedded in was gradual. It was very cult-like. It was very controlling. It's one of those things where it's easy to join the group, harder to leave. Once, before she even admitted to herself that she wanted out, she happened to attend a book reading by a gay man who had been through conversion therapy. The way he described his experience resonated with me. A light bulb went off. I was like, oh shit. You don't necessarily want to believe you accidentally created an ex-trans community that you've been doing conversion therapy on yourself.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Later in 2018, some of her writings would be featured without consent in the anti-trans book When Harry Became Sally, responding to the transgender moment, written by conservative, religious, quote-unquote scholar Ryan T. Anderson. Wasn't the first time right-wing Christians had misused her writing. At the time the book came out, I was already saying my transition didn't really hurt me. I was trying to make peace with being genderqueer and trans. I couldn't say that yet because I would have gotten too much backlash from other detransitioned women. The book helped her to realize the ties between trans-exclusionary radical feminism and the far right, as she saw that Anderson was parroting a lot of the same arguments that those supposed feminists were making. I was horrified because I thought the point of radical feminism was to fight the patriarchy and dismantle it, not like ally with the right to go after trans people, which is what is happening.
Right.
But when you're siding with the Christian right just to go after trans people, you're just a transphobe. This is still a quote. You do not care about fighting the patriarchy, sexism, or homophobia. You just want to go after trans people. Amen. That's what we've been saying.
Yeah.
Anderson's use of her writings made her think, if telling my story is supposed to help uproot the patriarchy, and the patriarchy is using it, well, there's a problem here. As time went on, she began to feel more at peace with herself and her transition, and consequently began feeling much happier. What surprised her was that the anti-trans radical feminists around her were threatened by her happiness. It was actually a disturbing experience because I'm feeling happier, but they didn't really care. Obviously, I knew conservative Christians never had my best interests at heart, and I kind of realized that a lot of these, like, supposed feminists are just using me. And then I realized these other detransitioned women in my own community just want to use me. Getting out has meant cutting off most of the people around her, and it took her a long time to speak up publicly about her experience. I felt comfortable actually sharing my story and speaking out and talking about this stuff because I don't want people to suffer like I did. I don't want people to fall prey to toxic communities. And to those people who may be thinking about going through detransition, she remarks, people should be asking, what do you need? What do you need to be well? We need to help people figure out if it's transition that's the problem, or if it's living in a society that wants everyone to see transitioning as harmful.
Right.
I came back to this because, first of all, I thought her words were powerful. That is, a firsthand account of what's happening. It's what's happening.
Right.
And it is crazy and it is nonsense, and it really is. It's like I never thought in my lifetime I would see feminist lesbians aligned with the far right.
Right.
But they sure as hell are.
Yep.
And it is against trans people. And it is this argument that somehow it's pie and we're taking away their dykes. And, it is, first of all, this notion that it's so easy to transition,
Right.
to me is insane. But second of all, if you start taking hormones on a whim, that's on you. But then saying I shouldn't be able to have my hormones on demand because you didn't think something through,
Right.
that's insanity. Are you following me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So It is not my experience. I do not know people that take HRT lightly or take surgeries lightly.
Of course not.
Who don't think it through, who don't do a thorough assessment. I don't know those people. I've not met those people. I know a lot of trans people.
Right.
I don't know anyone who detransitioned because they weren't trans. Like,
Right,
wait a
that
minute.
part.
I don't know those people. I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm saying their numbers are very, very small among our very small community. Somewhere around 2 to maybe 3%.
Right.
Maybe less.
Right. I was going to say if that.
And generally, when people detransition, it's for societal reasons, it's for safety reasons, it's for financial reasons, it's for family and religious reasons. It's
Survival.
It's not, yeah, it's survival. It's like, this is just too hard. So, yeah, I am very thankful that she is talking about it. I'm really thankful that she's saying this was not better, this was not good, and this was not about anyone supporting me without supporting me because they have an agenda against trans people.
Right.
And certainly my heart is open to anyone who wants to talk about that, to anyone who is, questioning their transition. Drop me a line, feel free. And please, I hope that, you are dealing with your mental health in a good way. I hope that if you need someone to talk to, you are talking to a professional, with gender experience preferred.
Right. Yeah, that's the important part.
And a licensed mental health professional. Discussing gender with a pastor, not the best idea in the world. Never was, never will be.
Yeah, no.
And I just want, anyone who's listening who feels that they're in that place to know I support you. I support you wherever you are in your journey. And I encourage everyone to always take all the time you need, not just to be safe, but, to be able to have a plan and to be able to maintain your safety, your sanity, your life.
Indeed.
So I thank her. I thank her for talking about this. And again, saying, and I'm genderqueer. Okay, so you have a slightly different understanding than you did. Like, all right, I'm not exactly what I thought I was. And that's okay. That's completely okay.
Yeah.
But to then align with groups of people who want to harm all trans people because you might have made a mistake.
Right.
I feel like I'm listening to, and I'm not lauding this person, I am thanking them for coming out and saying these things. Just like I thank the people who formed Exodus International and turned around and said this was a huge, huge error, and all of them are out and queer, of course, because conversion therapy doesn't work. It's extremely harmful, and it leads to death.
And it never did work.
Never did, never has, never will. And really the same thing is true in the trans community. I mean, we're finding better words. Support your family, support your children, listen to them.
Right.
And make sure they do have qualified help with them on this journey. But this turfy garbage is on my last nerve.
Yep. Down with turfy garbage.
Right. So talk to me about this Whitney Houston biopic.
Yeah. So for one thing, there's going to be a Whitney Houston biopic.
Cool.
And it's going to be directed by Casey Lemons, which makes me happy. She is famous for directing one of my favorite films ever, Eve's Bayou.
Okay.
And Harriet, which you also saw.
Yes.
It's going to be called I Want to Dance with Somebody. And it centers Whitney's rise to fame as she pushes through backlash as a black woman singer in a predominantly white genre and emerges as a legend. Now, the reason why this is notable for me, not just because they're doing a Whitney biopic, but they're keeping her queerness in the story.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, I know.
That'd be nice because that is so critical to her story.
Yep.
Yeah, in case y'all didn't know, Whitney Houston had a girlfriend. She was much happier in life when she had a girlfriend.
Uh-huh.
Till the girlfriend was sent away.
Yep. Even in the trailer, they highlight Whitney's years-long relationship with Robin Crawford.
Yep.
The two weren't confirmed as a couple until years after Whitney's death. Crawford released a memoir in 2019 called A Song for You, in which she confirmed that they had a romantic and physical relationship, but wrote that Whitney ended the physical aspects when she was signed to a record deal with Clive Davis, who I want to point out was queer himself, and is being played by Stanley Tucci in the movie, which I just...
Interesting.
Right. She said, "We never talked labels like lesbian or gay," she said in the book. "We just lived our lives, and I hoped it could go on that way forever. From a young age, I loved beautiful people. Sometimes the beauty that captured me came in the form of a male, and sometimes it came in the form of a female. Either way, it worked for me." So...
Yeah, and I'm not saying she wasn't bi, but she definitely, I mean, it was known.
Oh, yeah.
It was known as she was coming up. It was known in New Jersey. It was known. It was known.
Oh, yeah.
She had a girlfriend, Robin.
Right.
Robin was her girlfriend.
Period.
Yeah. And I really do think, yeah, a lot of the downward spiral happened after they were separated.
Yeah. That movie's going to come out December 23rd, so it's going to be a Christmas movie.
Okay. It'll be interesting to watch it and
Yeah.
see how it's all played out.
But we can't go see it until after we've seen Wakanda Forever.
Right. We have to go see
Priorities.
We have to go see that. So I am going to just touch on this story. And I want to put the link to this story in the episode notes.
Okay.
Because it's a fairly dense read. It's a fairly long read. I wouldn't even call it dense. But this was out of the MIT Technology Review. And the story is how the idea of a transgender contagion went viral and caused untold harm. And it talks about a single paper on the notion that gender dysphoria can spread among young people helped to galvanize an anti-trans movement. It's a really good and important read. It really clarifies a lot of where this bullshit has come from. You know, this idea, this totally debunked idea of rapid onset gender dysphoria, which is not a thing.
Nope.
You know, and it talks about the paper that this Littman is her name, Lisa Littman, who is a physician and researcher, wrote. What she did was poll parents and reported that they describe a process of immersion in social media immediately preceding their child becoming gender dysphoric.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's how the parents rationalize what they saw, right? Once a teen identifies as trans, Littman argued, they can unduly and perhaps unwittingly influence peers to do the same. Again, because the parents said so.
Right.
It's kind of like...
That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's kind of like finding out your spouse is cheating and blaming her friends. You know what I mean? If you weren't hanging around with them sluts, you wouldn't have cheated on me. Like that kind of shit. It's got nothing to do with the fact that I'm an asshole.
Right.
Like that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Maybe if you didn't call my friends sluts.
Whatever. Right. The paper was based on parent surveys recruited from explicitly anti-trans or trans-skeptical websites and online forums. Almost immediately, it did draw criticism. Shortly after its publication in August of 2018, PLOS One, a peer-reviewed open-access journal covering science and medicine, issued a comment that questioned Littman's methodology. Brown University, her then employer, retracted its press release about the study. In early September of that year, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health put out a statement saying rapid onset gender dysphoria constitutes nothing more than an acronym and urged restraint in using the term. They reissued the study 6 months later with a large correction, emphasizing that Lippmann's paper was simply a descriptive, exploratory one and had not been clinically validated. In 2021, the Journal of Pediatrics published a comprehensive study that found no evidence for the existence of rapid onset gender dysphoria. More than 60 psychology organizations, including the American Psychological Association, called for elimination of the term. It's a great article. It goes on. It really talks about the damage this nonsense did. You know, and it's kind of like once the lie is out there, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, and this paper has been cited by so many right-wing jackholes, it's not funny. Again, she went to where they hate trans people and talked to the parents of trans people that hate trans people.
Right.
And published a paper about their opinions of us. We can talk to the kids themselves, first of all.
What's that saying? A lie has quick feet.
Yeah, like they just did in the Netherlands. You'll get a much, much clearer picture of who we are and how we are and how we live. Not by talking to the people that don't want us to be trans in the first place. Those people will not give you an accurate assessment of who we are.
Right.
It's bad, bad science. Always was. Created this thing that so many people latched onto that isn't real and never was.
Right. Period.
Yeah. I guess parents who are just looking for a way out, a trap door, a way around it all.
Right.
This is the stuff they latch onto, and it's so harmful. It is so harmful.
Indeed.
Yeah. So I want to link to the article because, like I said, it is long. I'm going to read one more section. It says, the problem. Overwhelming evidence shows that your child almost certainly hasn't been duped. Although some people do reconsider or reverse their transition, once a person starts identifying as trans, it's quite unlikely they'll change their mind. No matter how strongly you believe that the internet, social contagion, and positive representations of transgender people turned your child trans, chances are your child disagrees. Really terrific read, really worth the time. To get a good grasp of why we are where we are today and the ways that politicians have latched onto this really hurtful, really harmful nonsense.
Indeed.
Yeah, so we'll link to that. I'm not going to belabor it anymore because, like I said, it is a thick read. So, do you have a 15-minute fave?
I do. And in true 15-minute fave fashion, she changes. I was all set with my song, and then I got up from my nap, and I checked Facebook, and I found out, oh, shit. So you may or may not have heard of a young queer content creator on the interwebs named Tony Talks. He... I feel like his content was born of the pandemic because he does all these sketches and all these different characters, but they're all in his apartment. And primarily he's playing sassy black women. He's hilarious.
Is he black himself?
Oh my God, yes.
Oh,
I would not be finding it funny.
I know. Okay, good.
Yes.
Let's just leave it there. Okay, good.
But his content, it's silly, but it's intentionally silly, and it's just hilarious to me. Anyway, so his most recent video, the most recent one that I came across, was a song called Call, and it's a minute long, and the dangerous part about it being a minute long is I have watched this video and listened to this song an unhealthy number of times on loop.
Doesn't shock me at all.
And I had posted it on our Facebook. I was like, why can't this be a 15-minute fave? Because I thought it was just a video. Well, somebody commented on the video and directed me to the fact that it is on Spotify and Apple Music, which means it's an actual song, which means, woohoo, it's a 15-minute fave.
Okay, then. Let's go out to the break and listen to it, and we'll be right back.
Yes.
What's going on? Where's this music coming from? You ain't got shit to eat. You call. Need some shoes on your feet. You call. That man you couldn't keep. You call. You call. You call. When you need to vent. You call. Need help with your rent. You call. When your money spent. You call. You call. You call. Girl got a problem. I'ma fall back. Yeah, they better cause they really wanna call back. Leave me alone. You got a problem, I don't got a phone. When your car don't start, you call. When your hair don't part, you call. And when you got a fart, you call. You nasty. You low on Tylenol, you call. Ain't need some Adderall, you call. You messing with the law, you call. You call. You call. Girl got a problem, I'ma fall back. Yeah, they better cause they really wanna call back. Leave me alone. You got a problem, I don't got a phone. My phone don't work. 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 My phone don't work.
Hello, this is Mama D, and I'm the host of Petals of Support. Petals of Support is a podcast that offers advice from a mom to anyone that needs a little extra love and support. This is not advice for moms, but advice from a mom. I've covered such topics as forgiveness, how to forgive, when to forgive, and when it's okay to not forgive, letting go, how to make good decisions, and how to handle stressful situations. I'm not a licensed anything. I'm just a mom that wants to provide to you the same advice that I give my kids, my friends, and my family. You can find me on any podcast platform. You can also find me at Twitter at Petals of Support. Please go listen, find the episodes that apply to you, and maybe the ones that don't. You can file that information away for later. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. Thank you.
And we're back.
We're back.
Well, that was a fun little ditty, wasn't it?
It was.
Okay.
An unhealthy number of times I've listened to the song on loop.
Okay, well, that got it out of your head, right?
Probably not.
Thank God for your headphones. Let's do a little pop culture palate cleansing. We did not do the cavalcade this week, and I have no intention. We did instead an interview with a young person I am just captivated with and fully supporting, so I prefer doing that.
Me too.
Yeah, so what's going on in pop culture this week?
Well, for the first thing I want to bring up, we lost an icon in animation and in comic book folklore, Kevin Conroy, who was the iconic voice of Batman in pretty much every iteration of Batman in animation over the past 20 years, passed away.
So these are not, he was not the voice during my childhood.
No.
Okay.
Starting from I believe.
Or yours, actually.
No, but
well, I'm just saying, if it's 20 years. Right?
I was in high school when Batman the Animated
Then it's more than
series came
20
out.
years, honey. There's that math you hate.
Shit, you're right.
Are you thinking he's been doing it more like 30 plus years?
Oh my God.
Is that what you mean?
I hate math.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Kevin Conroy passed away at 66.
It's only been 20 years when it's probably been 40.
Right.
Yeah.
He lost a battle with cancer. I can't see Batman without hearing his voice because it's that iconic.
Okay.
So rest in peace to Kevin Conroy.
All right.
And we only had one other piece of pop culture news.
Really? What's that?
So this is a bit of a spoiler alert, I guess, if you're following the Great British Bake Off as closely as we are. But contestant Janusz, he left the show, and afterwards it was brought up that he snuck a rainbow flag into the show. Every outfit that he wore on the show during his run was a color of the Progress Pride flag.
Oh, okay.
He stayed on the show long enough to get the entire flag.
To wear the entire flag one color at a time. Yes. I love that.
It's clever. It's optimistic.
Okay.
And it's fitting because Janusz was very, very gay. God bless him.
Is he Polish?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I know he had an adorable accent.
Yes.
How about that? I did not know that. I wasn't. That's subtle.
It is subtle.
Oh, that's fun. And now you've spoiler alerted me because we didn't watch that one yet.
Yeah, we did.
Where Janusz was?
Yes.
Did we see that one?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry about y'all. Okay. I don't know. I drink a little. While I watch television at the end of a long day. I don't remember him being the one who left, but I could have. I don't know. Sorry. Okay. So we saw that one, huh?
Yes, we did.
You sure we saw it together?
I don't watch it by myself.
Okay. All right. I didn't realize that, but that's cute.
It's adorable. And so is he, so it makes sense.
Yeah. How fun is that? I like clever.
Yeah.
I like clever.
Did you want to mention her story?
Yeah, her story was interesting. It's a series on YouTube.
Yes.
And they're just 7-minute episodes. There are 6 of them for season 1.
I think I saw 4 of them.
I think you did because you were napping.
Yeah, I came in.
But there's only 6 episodes to the season. Really, quick little series. But Jen Richards, who I adore, who was the young Anna Madrigal in the Tales of the City 2 or Back to Tales of the whatever that was.
The Netflix one.
The Netflix one. Jen Richards and Angelica Ross.
Yes.
From Pose fame.
Yes.
And Chicago.
Right.
On Broadway. So yeah, really good. Really good. Really well done. And it's, I recommend watching it. Again, it's called Her Story.
Yeah. It's really good.
There are 6, free episodes on YouTube. See them all in less than an hour. And it is really clearly from a trans perspective. Things that you would not think of that we do all the time are right there. And so it was really well done. Yeah.
And the writing was good.
Good writing. Yeah. Good little series.
Because like I said, I came in on the last 4 episodes and I was drawn in. And when you have, was it said 6-minute episodes, 7-minute episodes?
7, 8. I think the last one was 11.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're
under
able
an hour
to tell a story and have fleshed out characters and draw me in. That's well done.
And they really did. Yeah. So it's worth a watch. Really fun. It was a find. A friend on Medium actually wrote about it. And so I checked it out. And yeah, I'm glad I did.
Yeah, that's a medium I do like, the short web series. That's how Issa Rae got started.
How about that?
With the Chronicles of Awkward Black Girl. So
how about that? Yeah. I mean, good on them.
Yeah.
Good on them. So today is Thursday the 17th. Hopefully this episode will drop tomorrow, Friday the 18th of November. We will let folks know on our social media platform when we enter the world of Bigo Live.
Yes, Lord.
You do need to download the app to engage with us, but that's pretty simple and it's free.
Yep.
And, we'll see how that goes. So that was what was fun was about last night was, we had some questions and comments coming in while we were broadcasting.
Yeah, we did.
And I like that format. I like it. Yeah. We'll see how it goes. I think I'm up for it.
Oh, yeah.
I think I'm up for it. Yeah, so that's exciting and on the horizon. Anything else going on? That we can talk about even?
No, I think that's, yeah.
Your latest episode of Dance Talk is out.
Right. I talked to the fabulous Zane Booker, who gets more and more fabulous every time I talk to him.
I know,
My
right?
goodness.
Dance Talk Radio. Zane Booker is a legend.
Yeah.
It was a great interview when he's just talking about Misha and,
Right. Just,
when I worked with Mikhail Varishnikov, he was just, Misha, and he was just a regular person.
Right. Yeah, it's like, okay.
Da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, as he talked through his life.
I'm just like, my God.
Yeah, really good stuff.
The names that man dropped.
Good stuff.
Yep.
And we're going to be talking to...
Gary Flannery.
Gary Flannery.
Yes.
Again, a dear publicist friend put us together. And the thing that I found interesting, so Gary was a Bob Fosse dancer, and he danced with Shirley MacLaine.
Yes.
And he was in Gypsy in My Soul, which was a Shirley MacLaine TV special. But the cool thing about that was our dear one in New York, Trudy Carson Sales, who is
Hey Trudy,
Soupy Sales' widow, was also in that. Trudy was a dancer. She had been a June Taylor dancer. She had been
a Fosse dancer,
a Fosse dancer, as well as a Rockette at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And
the New York dancer, like dream.
She's a New York dancer, yeah. And they remembered each other because I'm texting Trudy as we're talking to Gary. And so you're going to talk with him for Dance Talk Radio.
Right.
And then we're going to interview him on Full Circle because he's doing some interesting stuff today, as well as his storied career that began here in Philadelphia. So that was exciting. That's going to be a really fun interview for you, I think. And then for both of us.
I'm excited.
Yeah, and I said he still has family in the area, and I said, well, if you come up, let me know, and maybe we can get Mother Trudy here.
That would be so fierce.
Yeah, and they could have a little reunion. That might be fun for both of them. So I'm excited about that. That was cool. It's cool, the serendipity of it all, and when things just kind of land and
universes collide.
Yeah, float into our lives, and I love that part of this.
Yeah.
So this is our Transgender Awareness Week episode. My heart is with everyone who goes to a vigil this weekend, who lights a candle, who says their names, because it is vitally important.
Say their names.
And we keep losing far too many in our community. With that, I thank you so much for listening. This has been Full Circle, the podcast. I am Martha Madrigal.
And I am Charles Tyson Jr.
And we will be with you again next week. Thank you all.
Bye.
Full Circle is a Never Scared Productions podcast, hosted by Charles Tyson Jr. and Martha Madrigal, produced and edited by Never Scared, executive produced by Charles Tyson Jr. and Martha Madrigal. Our theme and music is by the Jingleberries. All names, pictures, audio, and video clips are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of their respective copyright holders.